Everyone can be a surprise. We're working on it too. We don't have.
Oh, good. Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
Sorry, Terry. You can sit there if you want. Okay. As mayor of the city of Staunton, I call the September 22nd, 2022 work session meeting to order. And the first item. On September 19th, 2022, I received a request from Councilor Meade to participate remotely in the September 22nd, 2022 Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter that prevents her physical attendance at the meeting. Pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, I will now ask Councilor Meade to state the personal matter which makes it unable for her to attend tonight's meeting.
I am waiting for a phone call.
Okay. I will now entertain a motion to allow Councilor Meade's remote participation in this meeting pursuant to the Staunton City Council Procedural Memorandum Number 3.
Pursuant, Mayor Oakes,
Councilor Darby.
pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3, I move to allow Councilor Meade to remotely participate in the September 22nd, 2022 Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
A second, it's Terry Holmes.
Councilor Holmes is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Kessler, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. I'll now ask Councilor Meade to state the remote location from which she is participating.
342 Sherwood Avenue, Staunton.
Can everyone on council as well as the audience hear Councilor Meade?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome. All right, the next item on September 21st, 2022, I received a request from Councilor Dole to participate remotely in the September 22nd, 2022 Staunton City Council meeting due to a temporary medical condition that prevents her physical attendance at the meeting. I will now entertain a motion to allow Councilors Dole to remotely participate in this meeting pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedural Memorandum Number 3.
Mayor Oakes,
Councilor Darby.
pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3, I move to allow Councilor Dull to remotely participate in the September 22nd, 2022 Staunton City Council meeting due to a temporary medical condition.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, this is Brenda Meade.
All right, Councilor Meade has second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Kessler, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Ms. Meade,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. Councilor Dole, will you please state the remote location from which you are participating?
1003 East Beverly Street, Staunton.
All right, could everyone on council as well as the audience hear Councilor Dole? All right, thank you and welcome. All right, the next item is item 1 on the agenda, a consideration of work session and regular meeting agendas. I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brenda Meade.
Councilor Meade.
I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas as presented.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second, it's Terry Holmes.
All right, there's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Kessler, please call the roll.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Ms. Dull,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Meade,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to item number 2, a presentation on the bicycle infrastructure design plans for Churchville Avenue. Ms. Beauregard.
Hi, I'd like to introduce Rodney Rhodes, who will introduce this item and our guest here this evening.
All right, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Back in 2017, the city received grant funding to prepare a bicycle and pedestrian plan for the city. That's here in my hands right now. That was prepared with using a consultant and staff. And in 2019, that was adopted as part of the city's comprehensive plan. And I would note that funding has been included in the capital improvement program plan for the past couple of years for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Later tonight, you'll hear about some potential pedestrian improvements and some potential other funding for those improvements that were for some intersections that were noted in this plan. But tonight we'll hear about some possible improvements to bicycle infrastructure along Churchville Avenue. Churchville Avenue was selected as our first bicycle infrastructure area of the city due to a couple factors. One is it has a rather extensive right of way and existing pavement. It gets expensive when you start having to buy right of way and putting down pavement. But in this case, we think we can repurpose a lot of the existing right of way and pavement for bicycle infrastructure. And the city it's under contract with the Timmons Group to design these plans. And I'll turn it over at this time to Thomas Ruff of the Timmons Group to go through these plans. I would note that we intend to provide these to the public, probably at Gypsy Hill Park and the gym, hopefully in a couple of weeks, depending on the schedule of the gym and with the Timmons Group. But we want council to get the first look at these plans at this time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me. Again, Thomas Ruff with the Timmons Group. We're the on-call consultant hired by the city. We have a couple other projects, but mostly we focus on infrastructure development. So I could sit or stand, but I'll just go through a little bit. I know Rodney just gave a small description, but really just talk a little bit about the routes where the project is kind of start and end points, and then a proposed typical section on Churchville and Shutterly Mill Road, and then kind of show a few snippets from the plans. We have the full plan set. I don't have every plan sheet shown here. I don't intend to go through every sheet. If there's any specific locations, we can get into those in a little more detail, but really looking to just kind of give you an overall sense of what the project is intending to do and show kind of the critical areas and how we're addressing those. So the project, and so this is taken directly out of the bike and pedestrian master plan that Rodney alluded to. So this is not oriented directly north. This is how it is in here, but this, and for those not online, I guess I can use the mouse, or those online. This is the bypass here, Woodrow Wilson. And so the project begins kind of the city boundary is slightly beyond that, but the project begins at the intersection of Woodrow Wilson and Shutterly Mill Road, and then carries along Shutterly Mill until its intersection with Churchville Avenue, Route 250. So that's kind of one section that was designated in the plan to have sharrows. And I don't want to ever use anything that's too, what's the word, terminology, but a sharrow just means share the road markings. So that's really all that terminology is meant to indicate. There's one that's shown in that photo. It would be placed in a location with signage. So it's really intended to tell drivers repetitively as they're moving down the street, this is a road for both bicyclists and drivers at the same time. And then on Churchville, the project goes from Shutterly Mill to Lewis Street. So that is, again, I'll show it. That is down here. We did not take it all the way. It does continue in the plan along Central, but due to some of the geometric constraints at Central, and then also the funding is currently for this section this is all, everything we're going to talk about is not new, not changing any curb lines, not changing any, the width of the road. It is repurposing the pavement that the city has with pavement markings and signage to create these bike lanes. So after you get further in, there's a little more. We couldn't, based on what the project was intended, that's kind of the stopping point. This is just a little more information. So the Shutterly Mills Road section is narrow, between 20 to 25 feet of pavement. So you really don't have a lot of space to take any of that away from vehicles to give it wholly over to bicycles. And so that is why the plan called for sharrows, and we've kind of followed through with that. And then along Churchville, as many of you know, you've got in some cases 4 lanes, some places 5 lanes, as well as kind of wider pavement, turn lanes, kind of extra striping and shoulder that's out there. And it's repurposing that into a slightly different section. So quickly into some of the technical portion, these are typical sections from a design plan. So this is what the roadway would look like, and it'll look a little different when I show an aerial view of what that looks like. But this is kind of the shared road. The lane widths would stay around 11 feet to 12 feet wide, depending on where it was along Shutterley Mill Road. And these share road markings would be added along with signage to share the road and indicate the bicycle route along Shutterley Mill Road. And then this is a kind of the typical section looking at an area along Churchville Avenue that has a curb. So curb to curb, roughly 40 to 50 feet, and repurposing, removing in many locations one lane, through lane. So there will, in the entirety of Churchville, it will be one lane in each direction. So in the areas where there might be two, or it might be a very wide lane, that will be reduced to provide that pavement for a bicycle lane and a buffered protective space. So you'll see on the plans coming up, again, I keep forgetting the people at home, there will be an area that's buffered, and then the travel lanes, and then another buffer area, and the bike lanes are on the outside of that. So our first section, and I only have this one for Shutterley Mill because they all look very similar. We're not really changing a lot of what's on Shutterley Mill. There will be, this plan set does not have where the signage will be. We're working on that with city staff for the next submittal. But essentially it will be kind of a resurfacing of the entire corridor when that gets resurfaced. So you'll have new pavement, and in addition to the existing outside white pavement lines and double yellow lines, you will have the Sharrow pavement markings installed at each intersection along the corridor. And if there's a long space between intersections, we typically recommend 500 to 1,000 feet between those pavement markings. Again, to reiterate to drivers that there will be bicyclists on the roadway. So again, this is, I'm not going to go through every section. There's a number of these.
I've got a question for you, but Leslie, we just had a text from a citizen, and they wanted to know if we could turn up the microphone volumes because they can't hear.
Kylie, because he's my expert in
Okay.
tech in the
Should I
room.
face this way? Should I face me?
Hold on, hold on. I'm not sure where the
I
mics
was
are
gonna
in this
say, where's
room.
the
I'm looking,
microphone?
they used to hang from the ceiling. And then is it over there?
On the wall.
I'll see what Kylie. He's got it just, that's definitely the camera.
That might be a mic under too.
Oh, you think so? Oh.
The mic under
John's
the
always
camera.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do have a question.
Sure, absolutely.
I thought I was reading in our material that we would try some trial times when this is going to be running. Are we going to do a fair amount of advertisement to the public so that they know, like, hey, we got some people out there on bicycles, and don't go crazy down to the roads? I mean, I know police will probably be maybe monitoring that more, but I just wanted to make sure we could do, a fair amount of advertisement to the general public before we actually start something like this.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. I've asked Mr. Kessiker to turn the volume back to the level it was at prior to the interruption. If everyone could just speak up louder so our citizens can hear and we're not having an echo.
Sure, absolutely.
It's my understanding that the audio feed, not the Zoom, but the audio feed is the one that's not loud enough.
Yes, and that's what's causing the echo.
No, that's not the Zoom audio. It's if people that just listen to the audio.
we're gonna put it back to the way it was, and if everyone could just speak up, that would be great. So we're not having to worry about the echo.
Without speaking over maybe the city staff, I believe the.
Yeah, that's
plan-
probably more of a staff issue than it would be, to your group.
Yes, sir, Vice Mayor, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, that's one of their goals is to educate the public
Okay,
and to get that out there.
okay.
This is Brenda Mead. I have a question. So for the portions of Churchville Avenue where the speed limit is currently 35, do you anticipate reducing that speed limit to 25 miles an hour?
At this time, there's no plans to change the speed limits that are on Churchville Avenue or Shutterley Mill Road. However, that is something that I think we can talk about with staff, but I think there were no plans as part of this project to lower the speed limit.
And another question, it would be useful. As a bike rider, an occasional bike rider, I'm grateful when I have a stretch of road that's relatively flat, and that doesn't happen often in Staunton. It seems to me that this stretch of road from along Churchville Avenue and up to Woodrow Wilson Parkway is probably, even in relative terms, a fairly flat section of the road. It would be interesting in your presentations, though, to actually see those elevations if it was possible. I think folks who are interested in riding their bikes would like to know that. And then finally, do you anticipate that the turn lanes on Churchville Avenue, that portion where you intend to create bike lanes, will turn lanes still exist?
Sure, and I'll take those kind of one and another. I know from at least discussing with Rodney and the team, the goal of using Shutterley Mill was there is a large amount of the bike community that uses Shutterley to reach areas outside of the city that are across Woodrow Wilson Parkway. So that was one of the reasons this route was chosen, was that it does allow people to exit the city into a more rural setting for mountain biking is probably, so it's not chosen for its elevation purposes, but we certainly can make sure when we meet with the public to kind of get a little bit of elevation view to help understand what that will look like. And I will speak to the turn lanes as I've got a couple more slides geared towards Churchville Avenue, but there are some of the turn lanes have been currently recommended to be removed, but that I'll get through each one. I don't want to kind of open that can of worms all at once, but we are working through. We've received some comments from staff on some of those decisions. We made kind of what Rodney and I would call the Cadillac version, which is, we went all the way to the full bike lane version, and which was try to make it as safe as possible for bikes. And then we can talk about, is that where this plan wants to go, or do we need to kind of pull it back a little bit in certain areas? So that's really where we'll go next. So the first is the intersection of Churchville and Shutterley Mill. This intersection has already been repaved, or at least portions of this has already been repaved due to some work that was being done that extended just past Fielding Place. And so the improvements that you see on the screen to have a little bit of a bike lane and then a shared path along the kind of south, the eastbound section for 250, and then the westbound section has a bike lane. And so you'll see that throughout, is that in the uphill direction, the westbound direction of Churchville Avenue, we want to keep that bike lane there at all times because it is uphill. So those bicyclists will be traveling slower and likely not with the speed of traffic. In the eastbound direction, there are a few locations where the roadway does narrow, and we felt that that's the side to remove a full bike lane where possible. So this intersection is somewhat in between that period of, part of this is actually installed already, but just wanted to bring that out to start talking about what's happening at this intersection. And then again, it transitions on to Englewood, Shutterley Mill as a share road project heading that direction. See, so the next section, and this is where you'll see some of the turn lanes removed. So this is the existing kind of section from Gruber. The signal at Gruber is just off the screen to the left. And then we've got, the ABCD streets that are here. And as of today, there is a wide amount of pavement. There are 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 5 lanes, as well as a large shoulder. So there's a large amount of pavement that really allows people to speed, as well as there's no real specific place for bicyclists to go. As you'll see in this revised version, we do kind of narrow that down significantly and provide remove the 2-way left turn lane. So again, to go ahead and combat, some folks really love 2-way left turn lanes, gets traffic out of the way. But one of the things that it can do in an area is that it allows lots of coming and going in and out of traffic, and that creates more conflict points by keeping the traffic in one lane, having you turn out of one lane, slow that down, reduce the amount of kind of angle crashes. Trying to reduce the speed along Churchville is part of this project as well. And so this kind of creates a little bit different feel. So you lose some of that. You still have access to all of the properties. There is no concrete to prevent any of that, but it does turn it into pavement markings that are geared towards bicycle lanes. One thing Rodney and I were talking about, as well as the committee in some of the comments, was we're going to come back in the area here. We have a large amount of extra pavement, so those buffers there are almost the same width as a lane. And so we're going to go back and look at that for potentially creating some kind of other, something to remove that pavement and repurpose it better. But in this case, this is an area where you would be losing turn lanes. So that's kind of one of those areas just to bring to your attention. I'm happy to move forward or take a question or two or anything, but.
Well, along with the markings on the street, will there be signage?
Yes, so the route will be signs. There's a standard bicycle route, bike lane sign that will be used, but I believe the city, I'm looking at Rodney, I believe the city is also looking at having kind of route signage that maybe not. We had mentioned
That's a possibility.
So, that might call out kind of different distances to places or things like that. But there will be a minimum kind of a bike lane sign at specific intervals along the corridor where there's a share or a bike lane. So there will always be pavement marking and signage together. So this is a typical portion. So after you leave the very wide section that is kind of the northwest part of Churchville, you go through the park section, that's right along the park, where the pavement, there's room for 4 lanes or sometimes 3 lanes or 2. It's a very wide section of pavement. Some people treat it, I walked around a lot of this, so I can't say that I've lived in Staunton, but I have walked a portion of this and seen people passing and using the wide pavement for many purposes. And so this really tightens that up and leaves it as 1 lane in each direction and installs the kind of a bike lane and a buffer along the entirety of the park section. So that this is, I think that this is Berry Street in this photograph. So next, and this is the intersection of Spring Hill, the traffic signal that's here. So currently today, there is 1 lane in each direction that's through, and then in the eastbound direction, there's a left, westbound direction, a right turn lane. In the proposed section, and we are removing the turn lane, both turn lanes in both directions. Now, this I would say, again, is kind of the farthest extent. We've not solidified that we're going to remove both of these turn lanes. We're still speaking with staff, but we did, as part of this project, collect turning movement data at this intersection and did review it with staff to show that removing the turn lane, the intersection will still operate at a good level of service. There obviously will be a slight bit more delay, but overall, the volumes at the intersection do not warrant the need from a traffic engineering standpoint, maybe not differently, but from a traffic engineering standpoint, the need for the turn lanes in both directions. And so this helps as well as the roadway does narrow to the east. There is the stone wall that is along the park. So keeping a buffered bike lane where bicyclists can feel safe along that wall is kind of a big component of kind of getting folks through. We did look, just, I know this might be a question, we did look at routing the bicyclists onto Constitution Avenue, Constitution Drive through the park. The only issue here is that this is treated as a one-way traffic pattern, so it does travel. It winds its way, but it travels west in this direction, west only. So we would have had a contraflow bike lane on that side of the street and felt that that was not a safe to have bicyclists come off the road and then be driving against traffic through the park. Again, that's just something that was part of the discussion as we went through.
Was this is Brenda Mead, any part of the discussion include putting, for instance, a three-way stop at that intersection of Spring Hill Road and Churchville Avenue? That would further slow traffic down, it seems to me, and possibly even at Selma Boulevard, a stop at that point, just a stop sign.
So at this time, our the traffic engineering work that we did was geared towards reviewing, keeping the traffic signal there in place. We can make sure to make a note of that and review that with staff, but I do not think the intention was ever to remove the signal. But again, we can make sure that gets discussed if that's sure.
I can tell you, it won't be a problem probably headed into town. But I can tell you, you shut that turn lane down from that way in Spring Hill Road, you're gonna get them cut off going behind Royal
Yeah.
Station. I can promise you.
Cutting through.
Yeah.
They do that now.
Yeah, do it now, but you shut that turn lane down and that's what's gonna happen.
Sure, and it's not to take away from, we did collect a large number of right turn movements there, but in terms of the traffic signal operating as it should, from that perspective, does that mean we may need to review some additional access management? The entrances being where they are for the service station, I know are very, very close to the intersection, so that.
Because Spring Hill's a pretty busy road and there's a lot of, I know you said you looked at it, but it seems to be when I've been there, there's a lot of turning going on through there,
But what you're saying isn't it that you've done a study and the data supports the elimination of those turn lanes? So really a data-driven solution would be to eliminate those turn lanes. Is that correct?
That's correct. The traffic signal timing can be set up so that there is more time given to allow those right turns to go, with the through volume. Again, that does not stop every driver. I'm sure the chief can tell me the number of times. I'm in an office, so I'm not out there every day. But it is just kind of looking at it from the data side that the signal has the capacity to remove the turn lane.
Do you have any idea how many cars go through that intersection?
So there are in the morning there are about 250 that head in the westbound direction. In the evening, it's about 500, and of that, 20%, about 100 of those turn right. So in the peak it's about 20, but the majority do travel through. The left turn movement is even smaller, so it's about 30 in the morning and 40 in the afternoon. So the majority of traffic is through, but again, that doesn't take away, and again, it doesn't take away the lived experience. And obviously having the access point through the service station is not ideal for forcing people to try something a little newer. So we did include, and I think this was a little bit outside of our project, but we did include kind of a couple places we've put in kind of painted medians. Again, that won't stop anyone if they don't want to, but we're trying to come up with a few ideas that maybe could become more access management ideas in the future that for this project, trying to keep it as much as we could.
Does the data from your study show, like with the lights, like coming into town, how far back traffic might be pushed back in front of the park before the turn onto Spring Hill Road?
I can give you, a lot of numbers here, but I don't want to say that it should only be numbers here. So today, in the peak hour, usually there would be about around 200 feet of queue, which roughly equates to, 8 to 10 vehicles that are backed up. In the future condition, it would go to around 300 feet, so probably another 5 vehicles of queue. We didn't see it in our modeling go back through the next intersection at Donaghy. So that was that was what we took as something to recommend it. If the queuing had extended into the next intersection at Donaghy, that would be something we were, okay, that's not acceptable. We don't want to then mess up a second traffic signal that then pushes further away, so that in that westbound direction. So roughly, and just so everyone, just an idea of what 300 feet might mean. So we've got on the plans, and they'll show up here on screen. Every 100 feet is marked on the plan. So roughly from the stop bar, 300 feet. So 161, 62, 63, 64 would be just on the other side of this intersection. So the queuing today backs up, roughly to the Selma intersection, and then just would likely be a little further behind. Just to give you a visual idea of what 300 to 250, 350 feet kind of means. So next is the Donaghy intersection. Obviously, a very curious intersection from any traffic engineer's perspective. But really the biggest change that happens here is there is an existing left turn lane that goes into the church that we have removed. And I'll show that on the next plan. And then these concrete medians that are out there today have also been recommended for removal to help shift how the pavement markings go through the intersection. So we have we went out and field measured all of these to make sure we could fit along the wall, we can fit a buffered lane. We can keep the left turn lane onto Donaghy, but we did, based on what's going on with the bike lane here and how this left turn lane operates and where this the eastbound through lane needs to be, having a left turn lane into Arlington Street is not safe, and it already operates in a very unsafe condition. But so we took that to remove that left turn lane as part of this project. But we do have room to carry these buffered bike lanes through the intersection. So that's really, we were excited to have that because we didn't want to make, because of the curvature here, we didn't want to put people back into the roadway. So having a buffered lane was important to keep through the intersection. Looks like you were about to ask a question, but
I'm just intrigued.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while.
So you're saying that line, this side, right up against the park, is a buffered bike lane?
correct. So
That's the buffer lane.
yeah, so it's shown as 5 feet for a bike lane from the edge of the curb. And then there's a 3-foot buffer. So in essence, it creates an 8-foot bike lane, but we always talk about cyclists as A, B, C, D, right? Your A's are the people that would go out if it was raining and they're going straight up a mountain and they don't care if they're next to an 18-wheeler. Your B riders like to bike, they go on the weekends, maybe here or there. And then your C riders they have a bike, and D is you never bike. So an A biker doesn't care if we have bike lanes out here, but the B and C bikers, they need that buffered bike lane, that space to feel safe. And so without a buffer, you're right up against traffic. And in this case, because of the wall, we now have 8 feet where you can feel more comfortable.
And what is this buffer?
In this case, it's just paint. It's just a painted. We've discussed other remedies, but in terms of cost, really we haven't explored anything further. But there are locations around the country that put in sometimes medians or bollards, or we've seen rumble strips. Instead of any number of things that will help protect the bicyclist, but in this case, it is just a painted buffer.
The only reason I say, because I've I use that road a lot. I mean, and I've come around there, especially at nighttime. And you feel if there's other cars coming, I get over and I mean, feel like I'm right up against the wall. And I'm just,
People
it
fly through
worries
that
me.
intersection too.
Yeah, I mean, they do fly.
Yeah, and so one of the recommendations too, and you'll see, it's a little faint, I know, but so the through lane actually kind of moves over and there is a median, I believe it's about 2 feet wide or 1 foot wide, depending on where you measure, but it is currently roughly in this area. And so by moving the through lane over as well, so, you know, vehicles will be a little further from that.
Yeah, okay.
Then the bicyclists will be the ones closest to that wall.
There's no sidewalk.
No,
And there are no, yes,
The
correct.
tricky part I see is when you're coming off of Donaghy and you're making, like, you're coming down around to go to the main entrance of the park. You know, that sometimes people, they
You get pretty
get
close
over,
to
they
the
get
wall.
over to the wall that way. So now with that bike lane there, it's gonna be something that people have to be really aware of.
It's gonna be an interesting one.
We're just concerned about, obviously, safety first.
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm worried about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope that with the plan, you know, again, you'll see a reduction in speeds because part of the plan, not only are we in some places removing lanes, but we are restricting all the lanes to be 11 feet wide. So they're not, currently today, you have some 12 to 15 foot wide lanes, which allow you to drive or feel like you can drive faster.
Right.
You know, trying to have a consistent width where you always have pavement markings that kind of lock you in is the plan. Try to guide people a bit more, which hopefully leads to more traffic calming as well. So this is finally, so again, another tricky intersection at Thorn Rose and Constitution. There really aren't any major changes here. The turn lanes do stay that go into the park and onto Thorn Rose. We really just repurpose the wide pavement to allow. So currently, one of the reasons is this section of road here is almost 20 feet wide, almost 2 lanes wide. And then the left turn lane is also wider than a typical turn lane. It's about 15 feet wide. So there's a large amount of pavement in the curve that is not being really used other than to allow people to make a little more sweeping turns. And so the revised plan would carry. Now you see there's a lot more pavement markings on the road. And so obviously, you know, we hope that will give drivers more direction and also give bicyclists, again, a space where they can travel in both directions. There is, in this section, where we start getting into the sidewalk portion. So that kind of starts a little bit around Arlington and does carry through. So just as a note on that side of the street, and then it does pick up on both sides through the intersection. But at this intersection, we're able to keep the maneuvers and then keep the bike lanes going through. So we think having that through the intersection is very important to keeping, again, intersections are the most dangerous place for bicyclists. So we want to make sure we address those. And then our final, just to kind of show the ending point. So this is at Lewis and Churchville. We have, as you're going westbound on Churchville, you will be directed, we will be removing, there's currently a left turn lane that does go into kind of this park that's here. But that property, but that left turn lane would be removed here, and then traffic would shift into that space and carry through the intersection. So there isn't right now, since the bike lanes are intended to continue on to Central in the future, we have just indicated that the bike lane would carry on through. So any bicyclist that was coming into town would have the option of going in any direction, but we're directing them kind of into the street there to head into downtown core. So
You're taking them downtown Lewis, or to continue on and go down to Augusta?
So, and that's something we've talked about.
Central.
Yeah, the official plan for the next, so this is the last part of this project, stopping at Lewis, but we have kind of shown what the future plan is, which the next stage of development would be carrying the bike lane down Central But for this project, it stops at Lewis, but wanted to make sure we incorporated what would be coming next.
Great. We're running about 5 minutes behind.
Okay, sure.
But are there any quick questions?
Well, I'm curious with the bump outs on Central, how is that gonna, is there gonna be enough width there to put a bike lane?
If I may ask, address that, that's outside the scope of this project. That was designed without bike lanes. So that would probably be sharrows, like was shown at the very beginning of this presentation on Chevrolet Mill Road. That's a very flat, level street. I ride it 3 or 4 times a week myself on a bike. Speed traffic. So bike lanes are not necessary on that.
Well, thank you very much. This is some
Interesting.
very interesting information, and we have a lot to consider.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And again, my contact information is there, so we'll await. I know our next step is to do a public meeting, so we intend to incorporate any of your comments, staff comments, and the public comments into those plans.
Okay. And your contact information is with Leslie, do you have it?
There we go.
Oh,
It should be.
Alright, so,
If not, it's-
Rodney Rose has it. Okay, great. Well, again, thank you.
thank you very much.
Takes us on to the next item, which is item 3, municipal separate storm sewer system permit and Chesapeake Bay TMDL action plan update. Ms. Beauregard.
Pete Christopher, the city's environmental programs administrator, will walk through this item, and I believe he also has a PowerPoint.
Yeah, so I'm Pete Kesker, Environmental Programs Administrator. So I want to thank council for the opportunity to give Environmental Programs Division time to provide an update for the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program, which is commonly known as MS4. We know why, MS4 program. And also the Total Maximum Daily Load Action Plan, commonly known as the TMDL Action Plan. So as such, I want to introduce Keith Thompson. He's a professional engineer with Wiley Wilson Engineering in Lynchburg. And Keith is a vice president and acting water resource leader for the firm. And he's been instrumental in the development of the city's MS4 and TMDL program since its inception in 2013. So I look forward to his presentation to the council in this regard. And Keith, with that, you can have at it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Welcome.
And thank you, council. I truly appreciate the opportunity to both present, but also present in this format. You having this option allowed me to go to one of my children's doctor's appointments this afternoon, and that's very much appreciated. As we get going tonight, I've got a few things we're going to go through, but first, let me make sure that you are seeing my screen share. Is that working okay? Great. I'm going to go through a few quick items, really talking a little bit about the history. I understand since last time I presented, there's a few new members. So I want to make sure you understand what the MS4 program is, the history behind it, and what's driving this current update. We're going to go through what we had planned back in 2018, really quickly discuss the current status and where we're moving forward. And then we're going to talk about plan revisions and recommendations for the future. Really quickly, I just kind of want to talk about Staunton as a city. You guys in 2013 were turned into what's called an MS4 program. And you had to do that based on the 2020 census. Effectively, you grew large enough so that the EPA and DEQ stated that you needed a permit to operate your storm sewer systems. And the biggest, one of the biggest things that came out of that permit was the requirement to adhere to the Chesapeake Bay total maximum daily load. Basically, it's a water quality initiative for any basin that drains back to the Chesapeake Bay, and it puts requirements on total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and the total suspended solids that any basin can release into the watershed down towards the Chesapeake Bay. That program, to adhere to that, is a really large program. So they broke the adherence to that into 3 different permit cycles. MS4 permit cycle is a 5-year cycle. So you started in 2013, went to 2018 as your first permit cycle. During that permit cycle, you had to reduce your total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and total suspended solid loads by 5%. You are currently in the second cycle that started in 18 and is going through June of next year. During that 5-year cycle, the TMDL requirement says that you have to make 40% of your overall reductions that were required as part of the permit. So that was a pretty big lift. And going from 2023 to 2028, you have to then achieve 100% of your load reduction requirements. And so we've been working with your staff for a number of years now, trying to plan and prepare for each of these different cycles and to make sure that you have an opportunity to meet those goals so you prevent any penalties that could be enforced based on your permit. So with that, back in 2018, we devised a plan of several projects that were going to be implemented between 2018 and 2023 in order to meet that TMDL requirement to reduce 40% of your overall load in each of those categories. Those projects that were listed were all part of various studies that we had worked on, looking for opportunities to have studies on public lands that you already own. Really looking for the most economical paths to projects to get those reductions while also being on your own property so that you avoided having to do a whole lot of easement acquisition through that process. These are the projects that were stepped forward at that time. The challenge has been several things for you. One, you've had a tremendous number of flooding issues that have come up that have redirected your attention and your finances towards addressing. Another thing that happened is that the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, actually kind of changed things. They changed the rules on how we take credit for things. One of the things that you see on here at the very top line is the existing load reduction. And you can see there was a very significant existing load reduction that we took advantage of. And that existing load reduction was based on projects you'd already done. Things like Lake Thames, the upgrades you did to that facility a few years ago, and also taking advantage of good practices that you already had, like street sweeping. When DEQ changed some of the rules, street sweeping was a big one that they hit. And that was an area that Staunton had been doing a really great job of for years. And you were monitoring how many tons of garbage and grit and different things that you were eliminating off the streets, therefore out of the watershed. But when they changed the rules, they no longer allowed you to take credit for it by the pounds that you were removing. And they moved it to a lane miles calculation. With that calculation also came a reduction in credit. And so that really changed the equation that we had to use to look at what your load reductions were. And so if you look at that top row right there, the existing load reduction, just because of the rules changed, went from 3,000 pounds of nitrogen that you had already reduced, 1,200 pounds of phosphorus that you had already reduced, and over 370,000 pounds of total suspended solids you reduced, all the way down to these numbers you see here. That was a tremendous hit for your MS4 program, because that was a big portion of your strategy to accomplish the 40% goal reductions in the second cycle that you're required to do. At the same time, like I said, there were some changes in what you needed to do, where you needed to focus on your MS4 program. So projects like the Green Hills projects got pushed back. They got pushed to the back of the CIP. The Wharf project with the permeable pavers got pushed away. The Central Avenue project, we took some credit here. We were going to take some credit for it, but during the process of final design, the stormwater elements got removed. And so there's no longer the credit to take for those. And so when you take all of that stuff away, we actually did not make the second cycle requirements based on what the plan was initially. So we've been working on with Pete and his staff to kind of identify what's the best path forward to meet this 2023 deadline requirements. And one of the big things that we needed to do is go back to some of our other studies and also look at some of the other things that you've been doing. One of the great areas that we've been able to take a huge amount of nitrogen credit for was the Western State land conversion that you were already doing. So we're taking credit for that, which is going to help swing us back to a path of compliance. We've also have several stream restoration projects that one was already ongoing. One was already in a study phase that had been looked at before. It just wasn't one of the higher priorities early on. And then we took some time to find a new stream restoration project in the Cole Avenue area. These stream restoration projects are very beneficial from a load reduction perspective. And so the new plan for our current cycle, which takes us through 2023, is to get all of these projects up and running. The goal right now is to get them under contract and out for bid, or at least out for bid, so that we can show that the funds are appropriated, that the contracts are in hand, and so that DEQ will acknowledge these credits by the end of the next permit cycle. The initial intention of the TMDL requirements was that these projects actually be completed by 2023. We know at this point that's not feasible. But we see no reason why DEQ would push back if you have the funding appropriated and you have contracts in hand. So that's the path forward we have decided to move with Pete and his team. But what it does, it also gives us a little bit of extra credit to move forward into the third permit cycle. And so where that leaves us with our 2023 cycle reductions, we can now bring back forward some of those extra projects that had gotten pushed back. We have another stream restoration project that's on the list that will move forward and move up into the list. The real challenge, though, is that even with these projects that have already been studied and already been planned for, it still leaves us at a pretty large deficit on meeting the TMDL requirements for the 2023 to 2028 time period. You can also see it's quite a big cost. We're projecting the projects that you've looked at so far will cost about $5.5 million during that third cycle. If we were to just look at buying credits for the remaining excess reductions that we'll need during that cycle, it's going to cost about $6 million. And so what we are currently working on with the staff is to start looking for and start studying the drainage basin to look for more cost-effective measures that can be implemented during that time. So coming out of the work we're doing now is going to be some recommendations on how to find more economical projects to include in here so that we can help to reduce this overall cost that's projected at around $11 million to get to total compliance. And I should say that $11 million is just for that third permit cycle. That's not accounting for the current projects that are in the second cycle that ends next year. So this program is quite costly, and we do have some work ahead of us to try to bring that cost down to the maximum extent practical. So as I said, for recommendations for the next steps, we need to definitely implement the current TMDL action plan, which is related to the 2018 to 2023 guidelines. If we can't moved forward on all those projects and get them under contract, we feel like there's a significant risk that DEQ, because it's related to your permit, could assess fines for not meeting the conditions of your permit for the last cycle. So we want to get you in the best position as possible, and that's related to getting those projects completed in design, out for bid, easements acquired, and money appropriated.
Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Brenda Mead. Could you tell me, we talk about these fines, the magnitude of fines that you're talking about relative to the cost of implementing these programs?
That is a big unknown, unfortunately. This is the first permit cycle with significant reductions. And this is a program that's completely unique and new across the country. When it comes to these total maximum daily loads that they assess to our watersheds and to our streams and rivers, previously, they've all been prescriptive. Basically, you try to do something, you see if it works, and then they tell you if you need to do more, you do more projects. This one is numeric in nature. And so you can very easily kind of go through a bean counting exercise of figuring out what the reductions you need to have are, what you're required to do. And then you can look at projects and come up with a calculation to tell you how close you are to getting it. And so with that, it's also changed the way DEQ, and really DEQ is a proxy for EPA, will look at it and assess you when you go through these permit cycles. During the first permit cycle, it was only a 5% reduction required. And everybody basically passed that very easily by just looking at what was already done in-house. During the second permit cycle, that 40% lift is a much bigger jump. And so I do expect some communities may not reach their goals, although it seems to be few and far based on my information I've been getting from other clients and just talking to people within the industry. A lot of people have been very either proactive, or they had already had a big inventory of projects they had done prior to this TMDL that they could take credit for. And so really, it's a guessing game as to exactly how DEQ will react if you miss that target and what that number might be. The only thing I can equate it to is when they've done audits of the overall stormwater program. And a few years ago, DEQ went through a lot of MS4s and audited the programs. And when they found things wrong within the programs, they would assess fines. And within the municipal stormwater world, there was kind of a running joke who would get the highest fine and then who could get the biggest reduction in that fine through negotiations. And, we saw initial fines range anywhere from $50,000 up to about $300,000 if memory serves. And, most of them were able to reduce it to some level by finding the paperwork that was missing or what have you. But this really is new territory, so we're not really sure. Like I said, because these projects won't be complete by the June 30th, 2023, we already know we're going to be out of compliance of the intent of the regulation. But we feel like there's a good effective story that we can tell, in that if money is appropriated, contracts are awarded, and then through that process, there's bid warranties and guarantees that will guarantee the project gets done. DEQ should be very lenient on that. If we miss the targets altogether and don't get to that point, it could range anywhere from a letter that basically says you're out of compliance and asks, how are you going to get into compliance, to actually assessing fines. We just don't know what their posture is going to be.
Mr. Thompson, when you say $50,000 to $300,000, is that $50,000 to $300,000 a year for every year you're out of compliance, or is that a one-time fine? And I know you're going to tell me we don't know.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So yes,
ostensibly it could be annually. Is that right?
Effectively, it could be, but what they generally prefer, as they prefer to do, usually first they like incremental increases in what happens so that you can get enforcement. It's the same kind of process that they would want you to do to somebody that's out of compliance with your stormwater program. So they would want you to start with, a notice, then move up to a fine, and then increase the fine and keep increasing that fine until you come into compliance one way or the other, basically. So I would envision that it wouldn't be an annual fine, but they would potentially fine you, and then with that fine you would have to tell them how you're going to come into compliance, and then if you don't come into a compliance again, it would be then a larger fine.
And just another question, you said here that one of the recommendations is to evaluate the current stormwater funding program. What does that mean? Does that mean our current stormwater funding program?
Yes. Currently there's not a lot of money that the state is putting into this program outside of a grant, SLAF grant funding, which is a 50% match. One of the things that Staunton did a really good job of, years and years ago, was to be one of the first implementers of a stormwater fee. But that stormwater fee really hasn't changed much over the years. And so, and really the money revenue that you're generating in it isn't enough to help you with a program of this magnitude. When you're looking at, $11 million over a 5-year period, in addition to these other 5 projects that you have to complete now. And so we do recommend taking a look at that program and looking at how it will fund these projects, and whether it is, there is some loan money that the state has that you can leverage, so you can leverage the money you have. But really, your stormwater fee is, most stormwater fees are operated like any other public utility, like water or sewer. So the rates get reviewed pretty much every year. Stormwater tends to not fall into that group historically, but it's more and more moving in that direction, to where, at least with your permit cycles, localities are looking at it and making sure that their rates match up to their needs. Because what you don't want to do is get in a situation where the permit that you have in hand is reliant on public funds that go through a process every year, and effectively taking money that could be appropriated to much more important things for the community away just to put it towards a Chesapeake Bay stormwater project, which is important. But in terms of other funding needs you have as a community, you'd much rather that come out of a standard, a flat fee that you're paying for, so it's not impacting the budgeting process year after year.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Right, I get in there. Couple quick things.
Mhm.
Is this Chesapeake Bay, is this a state mandated program or a federal program? When did the federal program get instituted? In other words, is it just recent administration before?
Well, then that's an interesting story. It is a federal issue because it is 6 states that are part of it. It's any drainage shed that goes to the bay. The federal government enforces that on each individual state. So the individual states' environmental departments take on the responsibility of it. They then pass that down to you. The Chesapeake Bay has been an issue for decades. There was different measures that were used, 20 years ago to try to improve the bay that weren't met. There was actually a federal lawsuit made against the EPA by several environmental groups. And basically the EPA lost those battles, and they were they were legally obligated to create this TMDL, and that TMDL officially started prior to the 2020 or 2013 permit cycle. And so they were developing it really from 2008 to 2013 is when they were doing the modeling and the development of these requirements that went into effect on the 2013 cycle.
All right, one more question, and I'll.
Sure.
You said that in order to meet certain projects, like 5.5 million. Then you said, but you can buy credits for 6 million. So in other words, basically the 6 million is that a penalty, or are you just trying to do it? Then they're gonna hit you up with another penalty because you didn't meet it to begin with.
Well, and the nutrient trading has been developed so that you can buy nitrogen and phosphorus credits mostly through other banks within the same basin that you're in. And so if you can't meet it through doing features yourself, you're allowed to purchase credits. You could get to near the end of the cycle and purchase those credits in order to meet your permitting requirements. Based on the projects that we have already studied, which are mostly just projects on public land, and the credits that you need, we looked at the current prices of credits, and it'll be about $6 million just for the amount of credit that you're going to be short if you do all the projects that have already been identified. And so that would be, in the current environment, that would be a one-time purchase. I do anticipate as we get closer to that 100% goal, and all of the other communities that are required to do this also start running short, that cost for crediting could go up significantly. And so, that's something that needs to be definitely tracked as we move forward. Some localities are fortunate in that they own and operate their own wastewater plants. When they own and operate their own wastewater plants, they can kind of assign some of their nutrient reductions that have been assigned to their plant, they can assign it to their stormwater. And so they kind of do some self-trading. Staunton doesn't have that ability currently. So, basically you would be looking for a credit provider within your drainage shed to purchase these credits from.
So does these credits do anything for the environment?
And
It
the
sounds like that's a penalty. It's like a bank is like, okay, we're gonna fine you for this, so give us the money.
it does.
That bless the thing.
Right. So these credits are purchased either from wastewater treatment facilities or from like wetland banks that are theoretically providing environmental benefit to the points downstream of wherever they are. The issue with that is if you, as a locality, are buying those credits and they're not within your boundaries and not along the streams that you enjoy and fish on and use, you're losing that uptick in benefit to your locality. And so doing a project that does a stream restoration within your community is going to see more local benefits than it would if you buy credits that somebody downstream effectively. The purpose of the credits is that it overall impacts the Chesapeake Bay. The benefit of doing these projects locally is that you not only benefit the bay, but you also benefit the waters around you.
I'm going to move this along. Mr. Claffey has the question, and then after that, if everyone's okay, we're going to move right into item 4.
My quick question is on number 6, table number 6, where you have the Cole Avenue stream. A, where is the Cole Avenue stream? And B, in the far right-hand column, there's 100,000 of the TSS, which is the suspended portion.
Yes.
And that number is, 5 times what any of the other restoration projects do. Why is it so abnormally high?
Well, that's based on this. We are currently working on a project with a stream restoration specialty company that has actually done calculations on this particular project. And because the banks are so unstable on this particular stretch of stream, those banks are producing a lot of sediment runoff because they slough off under high weather events. They're straight up and down, they're wide. And so a stream restoration will stabilize those banks in a way that will prevent that from happening. And so they have a lot of benefit relative to that. The other thing with it is that the full drainage area is within your MS4 program. One of the things that happens if you have a project that's near the boundaries of other programs, you have to remove above and beyond what would be required of the other lands. And so if you have a drainage shed that's going to a stream restoration project that's partially outside of your MS4, partially inside of your MS4, you have to meet the regulations that the reductions for the piece outside of your MS4, and then anything above that, you get to take credit for it. So some of these other projects have drainage sheds that go beyond your MS4. So it's a little bit artificially reducing their sediment reductions, because you are getting a baseline that you're not going to get credit for. And that's one of the things that we're hoping that DEQ is going to change the rules on for the next permit cycle. That's one thing about the stormwater world. The regulations are constantly changing, so we have to stay on them. That's an area that I have heard from DEQ they may be looking at again, which will make projects both easier to implement and give you bigger value to it, because you don't have to worry about that, because those credits would be yours and aren't disappearing. But in the current regulatory environment, it's kind of hurting you a little bit.
Right, well, thank you very much. Can you email the question?
Well, I was going to say, if y'all want to email me or with any questions, and or Keith, particularly with relative to Cole Avenue, we'd be glad to give you details, whatever.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Beauregard, this is a lot of information. So next time it comes to the table, maybe we can allot a little extra time.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and go straight into item number 4, a discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Almost forgot about you. Thank you. All right, we're going to go into item number 4, a discussion of FY 2022 year-end carryover.
Sure.
Ms. Beauregard.
Sure. Trustee Moyers, our interim chief financial officer, is here. And again, this is a very preliminary discussion about year end, so I'll let her start the discussion. So,
So right now, we're projected to, in fiscal year 22 with about $6.5 million in our unassigned fund balance. Did you hand out this
I
already?
did.
Yes, just good.
So I have a list of possible proposed uses that I have listed that I'll go through, and if you have something different, you can let me know. So I know that restoring the FY 23 CIP that was removed from the budget to be able to balance was important. And so that was put back in there at the $1.3 million. The next two items are from the CIP plan. And this was the plan that was passed last spring, I believe. And they were projects that were intended to be funded with FY 22 carryover. And so I pulled those out and listed them here. We are reserving $500,000 for the storm damage from the July storm that hit the parks really hard. The 625 to the side is the total cost that we have spent, but we're expecting insurance. We have $100,000 coming from that for tree damage. And then we have some more coming for like some fence and roof damage. We're hoping that we'll get reimbursed from VDEM for that. But if we don't, we need to be prepared. And so I put a line in for that. Next, you may remember we have a negative contingency in our FY 23 budget.
Right.
We need to go ahead and make that whole. And then the line below that is just a contingency for FY 23 for unknown items that might come up throughout the year. Next is FY 23. These are unfunded requests that were requests from various departments that we could not fund because of budget constraints when we were going through the FY 23 budget. And then we have the capacity, if it's your wish, to maybe take $1 million out of here to help fund the Gardner Springs pump station project so that the water fund doesn't have to absorb the whole overage. As you know, the bids came in higher than what we were expecting. I think our current plan, based on recommendations from our engineers, was to go with the current low bid. And so we'll have about $2.3 million that we need to make up and above the bank financing. So I'm hoping that $1 million could come from general fund and the other 1.3 could come from the water fund balance that we're carrying. Just to kind of spread that out a little bit. And then that will leave us with approximately 1.5 million that we carry forward, or
we might want to put it in the capital budget for next year to help fund that. So you could put it in just a contingency reserve for now. But part of tonight, and again, we're doing this earlier than we've usually done to try to get your input early before you see it. Usually you'd see it in November for the first time. So any input you have tonight, or you can send us an email with any input. I think the next time you will see this is in November after the audit is complete and we have the final numbers, because again, these are still preliminary. They're pretty close, but they could change.
I thought last year that we had raised the reserves in most of these accounts. Does this take into account the higher holding? We went to what, 16%?
16.5% for the safety net. This is after that has been taken out.
It's all been taken out.
The total projected fund balance is a little like 21 million. The 6.5 is only the unassigned portion that you have some leeway with.
Okay.
Yes.
And my second question would be on the $730,000 worth of unfunded operating requests. Can we get a breakdown? of
Yeah,
that?
that's not all of them. We just put a plug number in for now. So we will definitely, so we're gonna look back and review those and try to prioritize some of those. We can certainly send you that list, but this wouldn't cover all of it necessarily.
Okay.
But we can do that.
And there
sure.
is a section in the budget book that lists
Yeah,
those out.
But we can send those out
but
again.
Not all of them made the list. So when this is a more concrete number, we will definitely bring the detail behind that.
And on the CIP plan for prior years, was there some money already tucked aside for the Gardner project?
We have spent, I think, between $800,000 and $900,000 on the design of the project that we have funded ourselves.
Okay, but there's nothing else in reserve awaiting.
Not
the
that I am
beginning
aware of. Are
this
you aware of
project?
anything, Jeff?
No, it's been a key part of the water fund CIP program.
Right.
for
So
many
they,
years,
the
but
reserve
always-
is in that account.
Yes, it's a water fund project.
So this is the general fund we're
And
talking
we're
Right,
talking
about.
about.
right.
Right.
So, all
So
right,
what's that? What's the water fund reserve balance?
5 or 6 million
Right.
around the area. The water fund could absorb the whole excess if you wanted to
But
do
then
that.
you
But we
wouldn't
have
it
some
in-
major
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
fund projects
We have other
coming
projects
our
we need to
way
take
and,
care of.
so the taking some from the general fund was just a way of preserving some of that water
Sure.
fund balance,
Okay.
Sure.
for those projects down the road.
Mhm.
This may be a John Blair question, but when it comes to the insurance paying for the property damage from the storm, are we going to be looking at any loss of business income because the golf course was shut down as a
Yes,
result?
I'm trying to remember what that was calculated at.
We did.
12,000?
Yeah, we did calculate that.
Okay,
Yes, we will be reimbursed for some of the loss of income.
Yeah.
great. Love to hear. All right, any additional questions?
well,
This is Brenda Mead. I have a comment. While I would much rather see a year-end carryover than a deficiency, it does seem to me that we've been too conservative in our estimates of revenue. And we've been through a difficult time. We've had the impact of the pandemic. But if we're so conservative that we're missing opportunities to fund needed expenditures or opportunities to reduce the tax burden on our citizens, then I think we need to look at the process by which we are projecting these revenues. And I also think, I think we need to tighten up that process, especially as we go into the next budget schedule. And I really would have appreciated being advised earlier. I mean, we're 3 months, almost 3 months into the FY, into the next budget cycle. It's just seems to me that we could have gotten a heads up a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, about this carryover. And I also wanted to point out that $6.5 million is equivalent to roughly 28 cents of real estate assessed value of property tax assessment. So it seems like if we tightened up our projections that we could actually responsibly reduce our property taxes in the next budget cycle. That's all I have to say.
Councilor Clappy?
the only question is, when do we think we will hear from VDEM about the storm damage? I mean, how?
We're at their
how long is that
mercy.
gonna take?
We are at their mercy, so we don't know. Hopefully by the end of the calendar year.
But this is this is an individual claim that the city of Stanton has that nobody else is. So it.
That's
Yeah.
true. Ms. Fitzgerald in finance has been the one that's following up on this, so we can ask her if she's heard anything.
Okay.
We do, but the last time we asked her about it, she didn't know. She had not heard a definitive date when we may hear back from them.
Because that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and we'd like to grab it back, so maybe we can put it to Gardner Springs or
Hey,
something
yeah,
else.
exactly what I'm
We'd
thinking.
like to not reserve it for this, if that's a
Right.
possibility.
Very
This is
good.
Carolyn Dole. I didn't hear Mr. Claffey's question, so I couldn't quite understand the answer.
Ms. Dole, the question was, when will we hear back from VDEM about any storm reimbursement?
Okay,
That was the question. Yes, ma'am.
all right, then I have one question. Where does our funding come from to fund CIP projects?
Miss General Fund, VDOT, grants.
Well,
that's the
historically,
general
it comes from the general fund carryover, the fund balance. So if you reduce that, or under the current method, you're reducing any funds available to do any capital projects. So I just wanted to point that out, just to, regarding Brenda's Mead's, statement about tightening up on that. You know, if you came up with a different way of funding capital projects, I guess you could project revenues in a different way, but my understanding is that's where the money comes from for the capital projects.
And I'm not saying that that entire unassigned reserve should be eliminated. In the past, though, that reserve has been substantially less than $6.5 to $6.8 million. It's been more in the range of what, 4, 5, 6 million, 4 million, I think.
Yeah,
I just think we need to, and so if we're better at projecting what our revenues are, I think we could, if we tighten that up, I think we'd have less, everybody's, oh, yay, we have all this extra money. This is terrific. Let's go out and spend it. But I think if we are better at projecting, we might be able to reduce taxes on citizens. And I think they'd appreciate that.
I think too that COVID's had some effect on the last 2 or 3 years.
And I did come prepared
That's what
with
it's like.
what's causing a majority of the fund balance, if you want to go
Yeah,
through that.
yes, please.
So about 1.3 of it is carryover from FY21 that was kind of Phil had reserved. So the whole 6.5 is not from FY22 alone. And then some of the major revenue categories that are causing the excess when you compare it to budget is the sales tax. Phil did budget, looks like about $1.3 million more, but actuals did come in $822,000 above even that increase in his budget. Meals tax, looks like he increased that one by about $800,000, and still it is 1.5 million above budget. And that's one that in the post-pandemic world, we did not expect to see meals tax to be increasing that much, but it is. Personal property tax, he increased that budget by about $300,000, but it's coming in higher by about $800,000 than what he had projected for FY22. Salaries and benefits for the total general fund, there was a savings of about $1.1 million, and I have a feeling that a lot of that has to do with labor shortage and open positions. And then that's about the majority of the big items.
Thank you for that. That was-
This is Carolyn Dull.
Really appreciate
I think the actual revenues prove that no matter what, we can still eat out and buy cars.
Yes.
If you can
Yes,
find the
ma'am.
car.
If you can find one.
Councilor Clappy said Long John Silver's.
That's right. Sales food day.
I haven't been there yet.
Right, any additional questions or comments? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Jeff.
Jerry.
Good job.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
It's nice to know there's $6.5 million.
I like that feeling. In the
She does.
than the opposite. Just kidding.
Right.
You don't ever want to have the opposite out.
All right.
Miss it.
Moving on to item number 5, update on potential for safety improvement for 10 city intersections, 8 downtown and 2 West Beverly Street. Ms. Beverly going to.
Mr. Jeff Johnson is here this evening, and I believe he has, let's say, brief.
Yes.
Okay, he's gonna go,
Yes.
he's gonna be
Fact,
brief,
I'll be flying through you.
flying through.
First person to get paper cut.
Oh,
And I'll tell you, all the information I'm about to run through, it's all in the packet. I've got some pictures though to help contextualize a little bit better. This came up at the last meeting, asked for an update. We talked about this before. We entered into a study with VDOT for 10 intersections. There they are. For fun, I listed them in the order that the public felt they were important. But these actual 10 came from some VDOT data where they felt it was worth taking a look. This is just about ideas though. We put a bunch of ideas together. There was some public interaction, a lot of back and forth with staff about different ideas at these intersections. Now that we have those ideas, well, now the hard work begins. So you turn those ideas into projects and into plans. And so the 10 ideas, while they were studied together, each sort of lives separately now moving forward. So there's some, so I'll talk about them individually, about what the final recommendation was at an intersection and what right now, what our plans are for that intersection. I will say that They did mention some funding sources. There's the Highway Safety Improvement Plan, the HSIP. There's a submission that's going in next month that we're putting together with some help with VDOT. Some of those intersections will be part of that. There'll also be some things in that HSIP submission that are not part of these intersections. And then the System for Management and Allocation of Resources for Transportation Addressing Safety, Congestion, Accessibility, Land Use, and Economic Development, which is the world's most tortured acronym, SMART scale. Now, those are the larger projects, the road diets, the new roundabout that's coming to Richmond and Greenville, those large projects. Obviously, these intersections would be part of those larger projects down the road. And that's another one that they said we look at. And then some of these are small enough that they could be done just with our funds and the money, the reimbursable money we get from VDOT. So there's a lot of different opportunities to get these done. Let's start with Johnson and New Street. Oh, not for nothing. Frank Strasser has informed me that that was Johnston Street back in the 18th century.
Johnston?
Yes. Now I'm just putting it out there. No agenda.
Just putting it out
Putting it out there. So it's a very unique intersection, right? There's no cross traffic. There's no cross traffic on New Street because it's one way in either direction. So what their recommendation was to redesign and reprogram the traffic signals to include a hawk, essentially a pedestrian activated walk signal, so that the light would be green until someone trips it. Something for us to think about. We were certainly going to look at retiming the lights and updating some of our pedestrian lights there in the HSIP proposal. They also talk about starting a bike lane here on Johnson Street. I'm going to kick that one over to Rodney in the BPAC to see what they want to do with that. But they're showing it here. Again, very similar cross section showing how the bikes would be on either side. Moving on to Johnson and Augusta Street. We absolutely need to get good quality pedestrian crossings there. You don't have to be a traffic engineer to know that. So that certainly will be in our HSIP proposal next month, along with, again, more of the bike lanes coming through there. So that one is also in that HSIP. Get to Johnson and Central. New crosswalks, absolutely. Love that plan. We'll get that in our HSIP proposal. I should mention the HSIP really has sort of 6 areas they're looking at, and one of them which is pedestrians crossing and crosswalks. There's some others with turn arrows and other signals that we may get, but for purposes of these intersections, it's a lot of the pedestrian crosswalky things that are going to end up in the HSIP. Again, those bike lanes continue. There's a pedestrian refuge here for folks coming across. Use the mouse again. For folks coming across Johnson from Central, a place to sort of stop here. We'll may put that in the future HSIP. Not sure that's necessarily something we want to go for right now, largely because it kind of depends on what's going to happen with the bike lanes. So where we put it would be a function of whether or not we're moving forward with the bike lanes. So we'll hold that. It's not a bad idea. We'll hold on to it. Yes.
So those new crosswalks are going to be in addition to the one across?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
That's why they'll be there plus this other
We'll have
refuge island.
right.
Okay.
The idea is to provide ample opportunity for folks to make their way across there. Racing through. Okay, up onto Frederick and Augusta. So again, new signals, new crosswalks. You can see over here, so we're really sort of blowing up that intersection a little bit, creating a little bit extra room, better sight distances. Now here we have a cycle track. Rodney likes the cycle track. But the cycle track is essentially two-way bike traffic to the side of the travel. It is arguably the best way to move bikes around. Again, we'll leave that one with the VPAC. The other thing is potentially converting that light at Central and Frederick to an all-way stop. All right, and that's something that that's a something that the HSIP program is encouraged everyone to look at. I'll tell you that an always stop is significantly better for pedestrians. It doesn't move traffic as efficiently as a traffic signal, but it's much, much safer for pedestrians. As I'm fond of saying, no one ever guns it up to a stop sign hoping it's going to turn to a yield sign at the last minute. So when there's a stop sign and you know you're going to stop, then you stop, and it allows the pedestrians an opportunity to pass. All right, Beverly New Street, again, another signal that really could be converted into an all-way stop. Right, so 2 one-way streets, not, and it would in fact slow things down a bit, not move as much traffic, make an argument that that wouldn't be a bad thing at that particular intersection. So now this is one that I think before we do anything, we are going to give it a trial. All right, we can bag the signals, put up some stop signs, see how it plays out. And if it doesn't completely throw a spanner in the works, then we can come back later and make some of these more fundamental changes to the geometry and geography. That's a good plan. This is also the first time I'll talk about the repurposed travel lane. I think we mentioned this before, and that is converting the right-hand lane of Beverly Street as a loading and unloading zone. Now, those of us who spend time downtown know it's pretty much a loading and unloading zone anyway.
Exactly.
But creating that as a designated loading and unloading zone, it does a number of things. We could also try that in the future. It's only paint. It's only paint to make that happen. Not really ready to schedule that yet, but I think the next step on that would be to give it a trial, see how it plays out, and then move forward from there. And that would also lead into whether or not we make any changes to the curb lines and bump all this out. Very similar, really the only real change at Beverly and Augusta, that obviously needs to be a light. That's far too busy an intersection for a 4-way stop or a 3-way stop. But again, we could continue that loading zone through there. Beverly and Lewis. So the recommendation was for an all-way stop, and the data supports it. We're just not big fans of it. The sight distances there are a little sketchy, and I'm a little concerned that if everyone's poking their nose out to get a look at what everybody else is doing, I can also tell you that this traffic light, this signal and pole right there, I've been here 2 years. It'll be 2 years next week, actually. And that is the 4th pole I have seen there. So that's all. That corner is already an all-you-can-eat infrastructure buffet for trucks. And so for now, again, we could try it. It'd be easy to try. That's not high on our list of experiments right now. Moving on to Beverly and Jefferson. Another one where the recommendation was for an all-way stop. Another one where I'm a little concerned about the sight distances and how that would play out. So we might try it in the future. And that would involve probably reshaping those curbs to move those stop bars to where everybody could see what everyone else is doing. Good idea, but something that we're not going to get on right away. Out of Hayes Street, we're certainly going to update the signal operations at that light. And look at maybe adding a left turn lane into Park. And add those crosswalks and pedestrians. All that will be in the HSIP proposal. That's pretty low hanging fruit. And then lastly, out of Gruber, additional crosswalk and some pedestrian signals to get folks across the street there. And potentially, maybe we can come back later and look at the pavement markings. But certainly the crosswalk and pedestrian signals will go into our HSIP. So again, each of these 10 intersections now has sort of got its own little way forward. Some are, we'll be talking about very soon. Others, we got a pin in them, we know about them. And we'll wait maybe they come into a larger smart scale project. Maybe in the future, if HSIP expands the kind of things they're looking for, or a new program with a new tortured acronym pops up that we can apply for. But again, a bunch of good ideas, a lot of fun working with VDOT on these. Certainly not the only things. I can say that we talked a little bit earlier about the intersection at Spring Hill in Churchville. That's certainly an intersection that we're looking at as well as to what is the right way to get vehicles through there. So, you know, and again, the HSIP program especially is a systemic program. They're looking for they're looking for submissions year after year after year. So I'm hoping that over time we will work our way through just about every intersection in town. I know for this first submission, a lot of what we're looking at is expanding ADA compliant pedestrian crossings radiating out from VSDB and putting in the good advanced tactile, the audio and tactile signals and spreading those out. Any questions?
Hang on, Mark. I'm going to give Counselor Holmes first dibs.
Yes.
Did you have a question, Counselor Holmes?
No, I agree with most of them that I saw here. I didn't see a problem with any of them really, except for, like you said, Lewis and Beverly. That's a bad intersection.
Yes.
And this is more of a comment or question, but so basically downtown is could be relegated, I mean, in the present plan to a one lane, right? Because I mean, you got parking on one side. If you dedicate the right lane to loading, you got one lane down to the center.
One travel lane, one travel lane. So one of the things that we will, want to trial is, so obviously if I am trying to parallel park.
Yes.
And maybe my game isn't as sharp as I want it to be. Am I going to back traffic? The idea is that loading lane, that loading zone, you could still get around somebody in that loading zone potentially.
Right.
If there wasn't a truck there. So we want to kind of see how the actual, so yes, on paper, it's one travel lane and loading lane in it.
Right.
But we would want to see how it actually plays out. I can also tell you that I would really appreciate some place to put snow on Beverly Street in the wintertime. So I'm not in an ongoing battle with everyone who's trying to get their sidewalk clear. So if we could put it into the loading lane, push it all down to one end, it gives us a place to put the snow in such a way that we don't have to pile it 6 inches wide and 6 feet high on the curb.
Can't carry to Augusta County. That's a joke.
No, that's what Lewis Creek does for us.
This is Carolyn Dull.
Counselor Doe.
They used to haul the snow out from downtown.
Oh, we still can. We still can.
Okay.
We absolutely still can, but to have sort of a go-to, even for a minor snowstorm, to provide some relief to the businesses who are trying to keep their sidewalks clear. And believe me, snow removal is not a satisfactory reason to restrict traffic. It was just that's just an additional bonus that I'd be curious to see how it plays out.
All right, well, thank you. This was not only informative, but it was also entertaining. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 6, roll call. We are now at the portion of the agenda called roll call. Roll call allows each council member an opportunity to bring forth matters for staff follow-up either during the same meeting or at a future work session or regular meeting if additional time is required to respond to a council member inquiry. With that, I'll start with Vice Mayor Robertson.
I don't have anything at this time.
The only thing I have is the going into Montgomery Hall Park last week for that picnic, I noticed the road going up to the soccer field. It's pretty bad in my opinion. I mean,
It absolutely is. And it's something that Chris Tuttle and I talk about a lot. Those are now that's non-reimbursable pavement because it's not a VDOT roadway. So we would have to find that from outside of our normal VDOT paving fund. But no, it is in fact, it is bad. And Chris and I talk about it.
Thank you.
Councilor Holmes.
I have one question that where we were talking about expanding the creek in the park, wouldn't that be a way of gathering up some more credits for the stormwater? That's what I was going to ask you. You know, where they were going to, you know,
Yeah.
do the
Didn't they do that?
No, and, it keeps getting kicked down the road.
You mean
What
why?
are they doing?
Well, they were gonna make it to where the stream could expand. They were gonna have like wetlands through the.
Exactly.
They were actually gonna put fish, everything. It was gonna be,
It was a stream restoration project and it was
Yes.
on the list in the TMDL presentation that we had.
I was wondering.
And
'cause
it's on the list.
here and he, I mean, he might know some of the stuff because they were the ones that had done the study, I thought.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Counselor Dole?
I have nothing other than to say that stream project was on the MS4 presentation. It was one of the creeks listed. So they're saying they need to have that done to get the credits that we need. So hopefully they'll be working on it.
Counselor Mead?
Nothing for me.
Counselor Steve Clappy?
Leslie, we have a timetable for a CFO. Do you have any updates? I keep asking. I'm worried.
Oh, don't worry.
All
We
right,
interview
good.
next week,
Next week.
at the end of next week.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Right, and I have nothing. So with that, the work session is now adjourned and we will meet back at 7:30 for the regular Stanton City Council meeting.
Are you good for that?
I don't have a wife or
Give them
something.
a reader's digest.
As mayor of the city of Stanton, I call the September 22nd, 2022 Stanton City Council regular meeting to order at 7:30 PM. The first item is to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me if you'd like to do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the next item is the invocation moment of silence, and tonight is Counselor Brenda Mead's turn. I'm sorry, wait, we received an email stating that she would not be able to do the invocation tonight. So we'll just move on to the next item, which is the mayor's report. I would like to report that I attended the Staunton Police Foundation Gala. That was very nice, very well done. Ms. Beauregard, you were in attendance as well. So it was a very nice time. I attended the Staunton Employee Picnic, in which 2 employees were named the 2022 Employees of the Year, Lisa Lambert and Debbie McCray. Counselor Amy Darby, you were in attendance as well. We ended up having some really good hot dogs and barbecue, compliments of Chris Tuttle. Let's see, what else? I attended the DEI Commission Open House, the meet and greet that was very well attended. Once again, Ms. Beauregard was in attendance, and I would say we had a really nice turnout. Yeah. I attended an SDDA meeting. They have a lot going on with the holidays right around the corner. I attended the West End Business Association meeting, and it looks like they are working hard to put together a candidates form on, now some of the candidates out in the audience will need to help me. 7. All right, so September 27th at 7 at Marcus Memorial. Or is that right? Marcus Memorial?
Marcus.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right. It's Marcus Memorial United Methodist. Okay, whoops, did I have the wrong domination? Sorry about that. I should know that. I'm a Methodist.
It's not Marcus?
So, yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
All right, I also helped with some last minute crafts and decorations for the big event coming up this weekend. And if you'll excuse me, I was asked to do this.
Uh-oh.
All right, so this weekend will be the Queen City Mischief and Magic Festival, which is our version of a Harry Potter-ish type festival. It will be Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be so much fun. So if you have nothing else to do, come on downtown. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I believe, yes, you can purchase some Dobby ears. So I know you want them, Vice Mayor. All right, that takes us on to additional items by members of council. All right, hearing none, let's move on to the approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion for the work session and regular meeting minutes of September 8th, 2022.
Mayor Oaks,
Counselor Holmes.
I move to approve the work session agenda and the regular meeting as presented.
All right, there's a,
Second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blair.
The minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes, I'm sorry.
Yes. We knew what he meant. All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to second that.
All right, Counselor Claffey has second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Kestaker, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Counselor Mead, it looks like you're muted.
Keep calm.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Mayor Oaks.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. I did want to say really quick before we move on to the regular meeting. So this weekend, like I mentioned, we will have the Queen City Mischief and Magic Festival, and downtown is going to be turned into Hogwarts. And each block has, it's what, 4 different blocks, has flags that represent the different houses of Harry Potter. And I noticed that City Hall was put in the Slytherin house, which, you know, of course, is representative of snakes. But thank you, Counselor Holmes, for wearing the green in honor of the Slytherin house.
I'm wearing the green in honor. I just got back from Ireland.
All right, nice, nice, nice. All right, with that, we'll move on to the regular meeting. Item A, a consideration of request by Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro Habitat for Humanity for the waiver of fees related to the construction of homes on Anderson Street, Haydenwright, did I say that right, Street, and Donaghy.
Yeah, Haydenreich.
Yeah. Ms. Beauregard,
Jeff Johnson, Public Works Director, will handle this item this evening.
welcome.
Madam Mayor, members of council, earlier this year, Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro Habitat for Humanity requested that a building permit and utility fees be waived in the construction of 3 single-family homes at 951 Anderson Street, 811 Heidenreich Street, and 1233 Donaghy Street. City code allows for these fees to be waived for organizations that meet a number of criteria. Habitat has demonstrated that they meet all those criteria. Cumulatively, while building permit and utility fees can vary from project to project, it's approximately $16,400 in total fees for each of these single-family homes. Staff has reviewed the request and also their justification and recommends approval. Mr. Brad Arrowood is here representing Habitat for Humanity if you have any specific questions on the project, and I can answer any questions on the fees.
Are there any, Vice Mayor
I just
Roberts?
wanted to make sure I understood. You said $16,400 per
Per home.
residence.
So it's $2,100 of water connection fee, $3,100 of sewer connection fee, $3,900 of water facility fee, $6,850 in sewer facility fee,
and then about $850 in cumulative building permit fees. So a total of $16,400.
All right. Are there any questions by council for either Jeff Johnston or Brad Arrowwood? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. All right,
Brad,
Vice Mayor Robertson,
when
I thought you were going to get off the hook.
are these homes looking at being completed? When are they started or? I mean,
Let's see, these are three separate addresses. It is 951 Anderson Street, which is a replacement of a home. There was a home that was demolished there in 2012. And that one VOTEC is working on right now, and we're going to set that as a modular there, hopefully later this fall. Heidenreich Street is 811 Heidenreich Street. That's about a 120-year-old home. And we actually just had to do some structural repair work underneath that house. The front foundation wall had collapsed in. And that's just a building permit on that one. And we already have a family placed in that house as well. And Donaghy Street is 1233 Donaghy Street. We haven't broke ground on that yet. We're talking with Dominion to get some power lines moved and get some right of ways going with that one. So that one's going as fast as Dominion, which is,
wow, I'm
you know,
working with them
yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Heidenreich.
Well, yeah, Heidenreich. It's
Depends on
the
your
one
southern
you
drawl.
avoid spelling.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Are there any additional questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brenda Mead.
Counselor Mead.
I move that city council approve the waiver of city-imposed water and sewer connection fees, water and sewer facility fees, and building permit fees associated with construction by Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro Habitat for Humanity of homes at 951 Anderson Street, 811 Heidenreich, and 1233 Donaghy Street.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second. This is Terry Holmes.
All right, there's a second. Any further discussion?
This is Carolyn Dahl.
Counselor Dole.
I wonder if we could amend the motion to include the total amount of fees that we're waiving. I think it would be good to have that on the record.
49,200.
Well, those are estimated. Estimated costs. Each project is going to be a little bit different. I know one of them is just building permits. Right. So one, I think, but I mean, that's an average cost per house. It's not necessarily the exact cost for these three houses.
So this will probably be less.
It'll be less. It'll be less.
Well, could it say not to exceed X number of dollars?
That'd be fine.
Yeah. So what should that figure be?
49,200, 49,200 if that's the.
That would be fine in this case.
Mr.
Ms.
Blair.
Mead, would you would you consider amending your motion to include that figure?
And that was not more than 49,200. Is that correct?
Not to exceed 49,200.
Could we just round that up to 50,000?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I move that city council approve the waiver of city-imposed water and sewer connection fees, water and sewer facility fees, and building permit fees associated with the construction of Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro Habitat for Humanity of single-family homes at 951 Anderson, 811 Heidenreich, and 1233 Donaghy Street in an amount not to exceed $50,000.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second again, Ms. Terry
Right.
Holmes.
All right. Mr. Blair.
Just for the record, since Ms. Mead amended the motion, we'll just say that the first motion was withdrawn and that this amended motion is what you're voting on now.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any further discussion?
This is Carolyn Dole. I just want to explain why I think it's important to have that amount in there. When we're looking at housing affordability and how, there's a lack of affordable housing, this is one this is one area where the city is contributing a not insignificant amount of money in lost revenue, I guess if you want to call it that, to provide 3 houses for new homeowners. And I think it's worth having the money, the amount in the motion.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? I would just like to say thank you to Habitat for everything you do for the community of Staunton. So I will be supporting this motion. Mr. Kessiker, please call the roll.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Ms. Dahl.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thanks. All right, the next item is item B, a consideration of ordinance to amend the FY 2023 budget ordinance for the city of Staunton by adding budget amendment number 2, city portion only. Ms. Beauregard.
Sure. Ms. Jessie Moyers, interim chief financial officer, is here this evening.
Welcome, Ms. Moyers.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tonight, I'm bringing the city portion of the FY 22 budget amendment number 23, budget amendment number 2 before you for your consideration. The school portion will be delayed until after October 13th joint work session between council and the school board. This budget amendment was introduced at the September 8th council meeting. There was a public hearing held that same evening regarding the amendment. The city portion of the amendment totals $950,000 and is to appropriate American Rescue Plan Act funds. Both items in the request this evening relate to flood mitigation. The first is $300,000 for flood shields. These will be reimbursable based grants available to local businesses in flood prone areas. The funds will help with the cost to purchase and install flood shields. The second is $650,000 for tunnel improvements. Funds will be used for tunnel maintenance and improvements to maximize the capacity of the existing tunnels that convey Lewis and Peyton Creeks. Focus would be on inspection and maintenance of the tunnels, along with possible improvements to help mitigate the choke points. The interim city manager recommends ordinance be passed as presented.
Great. Are there any questions?
This is Brenda Mead.
Councilor Mead.
Can you tell me about how many businesses will be served by the $300,000 grant? I guess the average cost per shield.
Members of council, I think Ms. Mead asked the question. I'm trying to remember. I wasn't, we don't exactly know.
I can repeat the question if
No,
you
that's
like.
all right. I've got the question. I just forgot who asked it. Sorry. I apologize. The amount would be different for each structure. So there's no way to determine what the average would be. It all depends on how many windows and doors each business has, and how big those windows and doors are would affect the cost. As far as, so that's the cost. As far as how many, we really don't know. We looked at the numbers of properties that sustained damage during the previous flooding 2 years ago, but it all depends on how many apply. Some businesses did this 14, 15 years ago. We did another program like this where some businesses installed these flood shields on their own. So, well, through a grant program with FEMA. But so we really don't know how many will be interested for sure. The thought was just gauge the interest, have an application come in, and we'll divide up the monies evenly depending on how much each person spent.
And I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Were those flood shields effective in the last flood?
If they were put in place, some of them worked very well, but they were older style, and the design wasn't as user friendly as the newer ones are. So if you don't put them in every year just to practice how to do that and make sure everything is lined up properly, some of them they couldn't get them in time. That's why, to go along with this, we're working on a warning system so we can give more advanced warning to the business owners so they have more time. And the newer shields are much faster to deploy, much lighter, and easier to put in place.
Thank you.
This is Carolyn Dahl. Mr. Glover, do you have perhaps a list of the vendors that have the best, most improved flood shields for business owners to, as a resource for them?
We do have we've looked at a few different vendors. We haven't gotten quotes because we didn't know whether we really had a project yet. I'm working with Rebecca Joyce at the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission to come up with this program. One thought is that we maybe, depending on the procurement rules and regulations, that we pre-qualify certain vendors and get some quotes from them so that we could kind of direct them to the applicants, or direct the applicants to the vendors.
And as a follow-up, my other interest is that would these vendors perhaps have an equivalent type of flood mitigation shield for residential people that homeowners could just access the vendor list if there was such a thing? I haven't looked into it, but
I think they could utilize that. There aren't many products for residential use. That's a little bit more challenging to flood proof than a commercial structure is, just by the nature of the design, having basements, smaller windows, along vents, along the, so it's a little bit more challenging. But yes, any homeowner would be welcome to look at the vendor list that we do put together.
okay, thanks.
And I have one more question, and this relates to the $650,000. Is this maintenance, is this one-time maintenance that's planned with the $650,000
No.
as opposed to part of an annual maintenance program?
This money is simply for the design only of a tunnel improvement project. It is not to do any actual work or maintenance to the tunnel. It is
Thank you, I
simply
appreciate
design
that.
work.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
John, then I reckon that really maybe doesn't have anything to do with this, but are we, as a matter of fact, do we have a maintenance program to go through and clean out these waterways, to clean out these tunnels? Granted, if we have another 1,000-year storm like we had before and had that kind of flooding, you're not going to do anything. But I mean, to make sure that during the year that things don't get washed in and block these tunnels that then create, do we have a maintenance program that's doing this on a yearly basis or whatever?
Mr. Johnson might be able to chime in, but generally after a storm event, Public Works crews will inspect the tunnel area to make sure that there was no real damage sustained. As part of this design, there will be a long-term maintenance plan put together that we will then follow going forward. But Jeff, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, so essentially there's the three elements that we'll be looking at. One is to do an inspection of the tunnels and a design of any one-time projects needed to get things right. Secondly, would be a recommended annual or periodic maintenance plan. And the third one, which sort of informs the other two, is to get a good legal determination on exactly who owns what down there.
Yeah.
Because what is the roof of our tunnel may be the floor of someone's home or business. And we want to make sure that any projects or maintenance plans we have properly address those. So those are the sort of the three elements. So a one-time design of one-time project, a recommendation of a periodic maintenance, and a good understanding of the legality of exactly what's going on in that tunnel.
Thank you both for that. Thank you, John.
Any additional questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Councilor Claffey.
I move to approve the city portion of the ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by adding budget amendment number 2, totaling $950,000 for flood shield grants and tunnel improvements.
Right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Mayor Oaks, I'll second that.
Councilor Amy Darby has second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Kessicker, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Ms. Dull,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Oaks.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Right, thank you. That takes us to item C, a review and approval of FY 2024 budget calendar. Ms. Beauregard.
Moyers will also walk us through this item.
Right, welcome back.
Thank you. This item is just to introduce you to the FY '24 budget calendar. This is an assessment year, so this calendar follows the typical assessment year budget calendar. We would like you to review it, let us know if there's any dates that do not work with council's schedule so that we can make changes.
Great. Are there any questions or comments by council at this time concerning the calendar?
This is Carolyn Dahl.
Councilor Dole.
None of those dates work for me.
All right, thank you.
This is Brenda Mead. I think this is probably just as appropriate a time as any for me to point out that we're in the process of approving a budget calendar, and city staff are going to be intensely engaged in this process starting early in December, if they're not already begun. And it points out the immediate imperative to fill senior staff positions in the city. A few weeks ago, the city manager office was closed for a week, with 2 out due to COVID, 1 on vacation, and 2 unfilled positions. We have an interim city manager who's also the budget coordinator. We have an interim chief financial officer. We have an interim deputy city manager who's also the full-time city attorney. And the communications director position is still unfilled. Tomorrow, the interim city manager, the interim deputy city manager, who's also the city attorney, will both be out for personal reasons. The previous city manager was fired in January. City council needs to move forward without further delay to hire a permanent city manager. Our staff should not be expected to continue filling in the gaps. It puts a strain on productivity, and I believe the effects are becoming more clear every day. So I would just encourage my fellow city council members to make this their #1 priority. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to state for the record that the previous city manager was not fired. And I'd also like to state that our interim city manager on Friday, tomorrow, you will be available. You're still working,
I'm working. I'm attending a meeting in Richmond.
but you'll still be covering
Yes, ma'am.
the city while in your meeting. Okay. All right. And we are in the process, and we're very excited about it. Looking for a permanent city manager. And the CFO position is rolling along. That's looking very well. So as far as the positions being filled, everything looks very hopeful.
Thank you. It's been 9 months. I just want to point out it's been 9 months. And it's just taken too long.
For the city manager's position, I believe our interim city manager has been doing a remarkable job.
Ms. Beauregard has done a remarkable job.
Yes, we will. We are going to move on. Councilor Mead, we're going to move on to the next item.
I haven't finished yet.
No, yes, ma'am, we're moving on. Item D is a consideration of resolution to issue general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed 8.5 million for the financing of the Gardner Springs Pump Station project. Ms. Beauregard.
Once again, Ms. Moyers is here this evening.
Welcome back.
All right, thank you. So we're here to consider the bond resolution relating to the financing of the Gardner Springs project. The resolution for bank financing is through Truist Bank at a rate of 3.54% for the bank qualified rate. And this is for a 20-year term. The required public hearing was held on September 8th at our last council meeting, which was properly advertised on August 25th and September 1st. As you know, Gardner Springs is imperative to the Staunton's water supply, and this project was started in December of 2016. The project includes construction of a new raw water pumping station which will move the pump station out of the floodplain, demolishing the existing pump station, and construction of a platform on the remaining foundation, and the furnishing and installment and integration of a 1,500 kilowatt generator, as well as the payment of the associated cost of the debt issuance. As you're aware, the bids for this project came in significantly higher than the estimates that we were working with. While this was unexpected, staff and our project engineers, Wiley Wilson, are confident that our best option at this point is to proceed with the current lowest bid that was received at the bid opening. If we were to restart the debt process over, the interest rate is probably going to be closer to about 4%, which is equal to about $500,000 in debt service for the life of the loan. The project will be funded first with the truest debt of $8.5 million, and staff is recommending the remaining balance to be of approximately around $2.3 to $2.5 million to be funded with a combination of general fund carryover and the water fund unrestricted balance that's carrying forward in the water fund. Staff, along with Ted Cole from Davenport, he is here tonight to answer any questions that you might have. And I'm available too. And I think Chris Culp might be, yes, he's on Zoom. He's our bond counsel and he is available for any questions you might have.
All right, are there any questions by council?
This is the same, the truest was the one we
Yes.
talked about the last time and came to an
Yes,
agreement
this is
on.
the, you did
Okay.
the ordinance, you signed the ordinance last time, and this will be the resolution.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions or
Do
comments?
we have any idea of how long this will take?
I believe it's a 2-year project.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Oaks? Mayor
Councilor
Oaks?
Holmes.
I move that the city council approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in the maximum amount of $8,500,000 for the Gardner Springs Pump Station project.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Robertson.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any further discussion? I'm hearing none. Mr. Kessiker, please call the roll.
Brenda Mead, I'm sorry.
The motion needs to be voted on.
I didn't have time to make my comment.
Well, we did give ample time, but go ahead.
I don't
Councilor
think
Meade.
you did.
Go ahead, Councilor Meade.
Thank you very much. I'm going to vote in favor of this. Time is precious, especially in a rising interest rate environment. I understand that Augusta County is projecting that they're going to be moving into their new facility in Verona in September of 2025. Even if they start in January with the financing of this project, they're going to be looking at significantly higher interest rates. So I suggest that we move forward as we're planning. Thank you.
Just making sure you're done. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to make a comment? Hearing none, Mr. Kessiker, please call the roll.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Mayor Oaks,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, that takes us to matters from the interim city manager. Ms. Beauregard.
I have 2 items to mention this evening. One is expanding on something the mayor brought up earlier, which was our employee picnic, Staunton employee picnic that was held last week. And I just want to elaborate a little bit more on what Lisa Lambert and Debbie McCrae did to win Employees of the Year. On February 3rd, 2022, after noticing the Rask Florist building was on fire after leaving one of their assigned work locations, they sprang into action as Lisa called 911 while Debbie ran into the adjacent apartment building to knock on doors and notify the occupants of the fire. They most certainly deserve to be Staunton City Employees of the Year. The second item I'd like to mention is also congratulating our staff. The City of Staunton's Department of Finance has been awarded the Government Finance Officers Association's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for its 2023 budget. They have won this award for 6 consecutive years. And this is a pretty big deal. The award reflects the commitment of the governing body and staff to meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. And to receive this award, the document must satisfy nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation. They include how well a budget serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. And budget documents must be rated proficient in all 4 categories and in the 14 mandatory criteria within these categories to receive the award. So congratulations to the finance team for this well-deserved award.
Huge.
That's all I have this evening.
It's huge. Yeah,
Great.
excellent job.
Congratulations.
All right. That takes us on to matters from the public. This part of City Council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time that council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the Staunton City Council's Matters from the Public rules are available in paper form at the clerk's desk and online on the City of Stanton's webpage. You are asked to familiarize yourself with those rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. So as stated, I'll start with the audience first, and then we'll alternate between the Zoom and the audience. So if anyone would like, welcome.
Thank you so much. Joanne Tigert, 913 North Augusta Street. I'm not gonna moan and groan like I usually do tonight. I feel it's a matter of my conscience that I need to bring this up, although it's not a world-shattering issue. It could be life or death. In the meeting before this, we discussed, y'all discussed dangerous intersections. And I agree with all that. One was left off that I put on the list when I filled out that questionnaire. You know where Virginia Avenue is, correct? If you lost your brakes at the bottom of that hill, you would be in my yard. So I'm well versed with Virginia Avenue. In my opinion, and I'm as being well versed in it, I think my opinion should count more than the average opinion. That street should be one way going uphill, because on almost a daily basis, I see more than one accident this close to happening. And most of those accidents, I've seen many accidents happen there, and because I stay out in my yard piddling in the dirt a lot. And that's, if it weren't for reading and playing in the dirt, I don't know what I'd do, because I had to retire early due to medical conditions. However, I have seen so many accidents there. And fortunately, knock on wood, they've just been small, the ones I've witnessed. I've had grandchildren out in the yard when they've occurred, and they've been horrified by it. I pray every time I hear a crash that everybody will be okay. But one day that's not going to be the case, because you can't see. When you come down there, there's a mirror up on the pole, but it's better than nothing, but not much better, because usually you can't see where, what's coming from the top, from the bottom. And 2 parking spaces were taken away a year or 2 ago to make it better for seeing. Well, it's still hard to see, not to mention that people still park in those non-parking spaces a lot of the time. My point being, it's just a death waiting to happen. And I don't want it to be anyone in my family. I don't want it to be anyone in your family. So I hope that before that happens, that Virginia Avenue will be made one way going uphill before it becomes a tragedy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kessiker, do we have anyone with their hands raised?
No, ma'am.
All right. Hello, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. What I'll do, I got to state my name or where I live. Right?
Your name and your address. You have
Okay.
5 minutes.
Samuel Orlando, 47 South Windsong Court, Fishersville. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about protesting a little bit. When we protest in Augusta County, things like fireworks get thrown at us, things like diesel trucks roll coal on us, people call me and my friends the N-word, other racial slurs, things like that happen all the time. The police don't do anything about it, they sit back and laugh. One time, Donald Smith's brother pulled into the parking lot and he called an African-American man the N-word and then slapped his camera that was in his hand. And he just got pulled to the side of the building and talked to. I'm sure nothing happened. That was a hate crime and that was assault. And one time we were protesting in Stanton City here, and we respect the police here. They respect us. They have body cams. We love that. And a white supremacist sucker punched my African-American friend in the head. And the Stanton police arrested him, charged him, and he was found convicted for that, which is amazing. That's exactly what should happen everywhere. That didn't happen in Augusta County when a similar thing happened. And it was Donald Smith's brother. That's the sheriff's brother. They just sat back and I'm sure just talked about it and laughed about it. The point is that if Augusta County police are going to be able to come to Stanton under the mutual aid agreement and be here, if it's not an absolute emergency, they need to have body cameras on at all times. We don't want the corruption coming over from Augusta County into Stanton, because a lot of corruption goes on. We talk about it, we protest about it all the time. When we come to Stanton and we protest, It's not for body cams. You guys already have that. And we love that. It's for the mutual aid agreement. We want that to be updated to where they have to have body cams unless there's something crazy happening. I mean, obviously, if they have to get here to protect people, that's fine. But all other times, they should have a body camera on. We can't have people's rights being violated. Me and my friends' rights were violated. We got found not guilty in court, which is great. And just, we don't want anything like that to happen here. I know Augusta County Police would bring that here. And yeah, have a good night. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kessiker.
No, ma'am.
Right. Would anyone else from the audience? Hello, welcome.
Hi there. My name is Bonnie Chapman. I'm at 260 Windsor Drive. One of my friends, Michael Phillips, had sent an email to you guys about the mutual aid agreement. And I'd also just want to express that this is a real concern of ours and we'd like you guys to look into it. Obviously, Staunton has different morals than Augusta County, and Augusta County has basically screwed Staunton over time and time again. And I think that it would be really respectable when Staunton puts their foot down, because this cannot continue to happen. And, you know, I don't want the things that I see in Augusta County to happen in Staunton. This is a completely different area, and the people here are very worthy of respect. And I cannot stand what I see in Augusta County. And that's why I love it here, because everyone is so polite and the police are great. And I just think that we need to reconsider the mutual aid agreement or put in resolutions that have certain restrictions to Augusta County to make sure that Staunton does not have corruption leaking into them. You know, one rotten apple can ruin the whole bunch. And that's all. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Mr. Kessiker.
No, ma'am.
Great. Would anyone else from the audience? Welcome.
Barbara Lee, 904 Rockaway Street. I live in the most dangerous area in town right now. We're sitting on our porch every morning. The buses are coming down. The speeders are coming down. Y'all need to get something done on that corner before something happens. Now, I did talk to Ms. Beauregard, and I'm understanding that we're getting some lights or something over there. When are we getting them? I'm gonna put it on the agenda.
Miss Lee, I'll
One
get
more
back with you.
time.
Miss Lee, we'll get back with you. I told you I would get back with you, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted on the minutes. And I would love to say, I admire you, young man, for standing your ground. You did an amazing job. We need to pay more attention to these young people. He's telling you, do not bring the county in here to do the city's work. If they don't have body cameras, don't let them come in. That saves them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kessiker.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Caller, you may begin. Caller, you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Amina Matheny Willard. I have been a criminal defense attorney for 20 years, or over 20 years, for 22 years. And I represented the protesters in Augusta. So some of the people there that you're seeing are my clients, my former clients. And I'm just here to support the request that when and if Augusta sheriff officers come into Staunton, that they be required to have body camera footage or body cameras unless it's an emergency, as Sam stated. So the importance of that, again, I think Sam did an excellent job in explaining, but we're asking that you sign a resolution that indicates that if Augusta County sheriffs come into Staunton, they have to have body cameras Or alternatively, that they cannot come in without a Staunton police officer that has a body camera. The idea is transparency. Staunton is doing an awesome job. And we're just asking that you not allow what's going on in Augusta to happen in Staunton. And I'm an attorney from Hampton Roads, and I'm just shocked at what is going on in Augusta. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else from the audience? Okay, with that, I would like to wish all of my fellow council members a wonderful weekend, and all the citizens. It's going to be a lovely weekend, and enjoy the Queen City Mischief and Magic Festival. With that, the September 22nd, 2022 Staunton City Council meeting is now adjourned. 45 minutes.